Hello again.
Hello. How are you all?
Well, everything's okay out here. It was weird to have the show canceled at the last minute because of John Mayer's father's health problems. Everybody was a little freaked out about it for a few minutes, and I gather everything is stable enough on that front that John could come back to work.
Yes, and we're wishing Mr. Mayor the best. Happy to see John back. And the band seemed really happy to be back. A really brisk, energetic first set, and portending some wide open spaces in the second set. Plenty of stuff they can touch on tonight. And
Yeah,
let's run down that set list, shall we?
let's do that. In fact, I'll be the one that does that because I have it written down right here. Man Smart, Woman Smarter was the excellent opener, and boy, oh boy, Jeff Caminti on the keys. New Speedway Boogie, It Hurts Me Too, Fenario, Cold Rain and Snow, China Doll, and Throwing Stones into Don't Ease Me In. Really, really nice, snappy set with
Boy, a
some
really,
possible themes of female empowerment and social concern in there too.
yes, a really powerful throwing stones and some very emphatic graphics on the video screen. I was happy to see. Uh, I'm really proud of the way this band is responding individually and collectively to the state of the world right now. And, my hat's off to them. Of course, we talked to Andy Bernstein the other night about all this, what Headcount is doing, what Bob and Mickey and Natasha and Carol Hart were doing in terms of activism. And it's really very inspiring. And we encourage you, as always, to support Headcount. Go to Participation Row at the
Yes.
shows and find out how you can support this great cause. Now, tonight, we're only going to be with you for a little bit because we have taken advantage of the ability to pre record interviews. Before we get to that, we're going to tell you you're watching this through the courtesy of nugs.net, of course. And it's a
Yes.
fantastic institution, I'd call it by now. It has become an institution in our world for lovers of live music. You can access an immense library of great concert recordings, live music in audio and video form. You can get live streams like this. If you are watching this through the free preview process on Facebook or YouTube or wherever else, that means you can go back and purchase this show. You can go back and purchase the whole tour. If you were at the shows and wanted to get home and watch the show all over again, you could do that. There are so many ways to experience this music. And there is an archive of Dead and Company recordings going back almost to the band's beginnings, 2016. The band was formed in the fall of 2015, and Nugs.net was on it almost immediately, providing these great recordings of shows. And so many other bands are available as well.
And by the way, if you have been to one of these Dead and Company shows, your ticket is good for a free download or stream of that show's audio. That's another way to get introduced to Nugs.net is to scan your ticket and hear the audio of that program, of the show that you were at. I'm a big fan of the audio recordings because I use them for my radio show. So I download them the day after. Actually, these are all being mixed this tour by John Altschiller. So they actually take a day or so to get done because they're being remixed by a true professional, which makes it even better. And they're downloadable in a variety of different formats at nugs.net and also tons of other bands, not just Dead and Company.
Indeed. So we encourage you to go to nugs.net, find out how you can get involved in it. You can get a 7-day free trial to check out all their wares, that deep library of great music, not just by Dead and Company and other related bands from the jam band world, but artists like Bruce Springsteen and Wilco and Pearl Jam, many, many more. So check it out for yourself. I think you'll be very happy you did. And now, as I said, we have a recorded interview for you today. One of the little benefits we discovered on this tour was that we could pre-record some interviews, which allows us to have access to band members. Bobby Weir joined us on our very first night. We recorded him the day before, and we just got another one. And who knows, maybe we'll have more before the tour is over. But this past week, we were very happy to talk to someone we love so much, Oteil Burbridge. And we had a great conversation with him. I will tell you in advance, there's a little bit of comic relief in the middle of this interview due to a technical anomaly. We think you'll pick it out pretty quick, and then we'll talk about it after we're done with it. But here is our conversation from a few days ago with Oteil. Such a pleasure, as always, to be talking to Oteil Burbridge. Oteil, welcome.
Thank you.
Great
Good
to
to
have
see
you.
you, man.
It's been a great tour. I hope you feel that way too.
Oh, I do. It's like night and day for me. My back was such a huge part of it. I didn't realize it until it felt better, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah, I noticed you were doing some of the tour sitting down last year, and I noticed also at the beginning of this tour you mentioned that you had a nice new lightweight bass. You want to talk about that
yes.
stuff a little bit?
Yeah, it's both things together that have been such a game changer for me. Because my back was hurting so much worse than I realized. And then I was like, wow, I'm gonna need a chair by Drums in Space. So if there's another ballad, it was just too much. Like I need to be able to move around and dance and keep my spine you know, in motion for it to not hurt. And so after the tour was over, I think last November, I went and got a shot in my back. And then that helped me be able to do some exercises, which I found from a professional wrestler. So I got into professional wrestling. Shout out to the Undertaker, and very recently, you know, and then I watch mostly interviews and like documentaries and stuff. And these guys' backs are really like in their necks and everything, hips. So it helped me put into perspective the amount of pain I was feeling. And so I got the shot and I was like, I'm not having this surgery. I'm doing what these guys did to recover. Diamond Dallas Page. He has this thing called DDPY, which is Diamond Dallas Page Yoga. And I do that now as yoga and isometrics. Got the shot, started the DDPY. And then I found this bass that is literally half the weight of all my other 6 strings. Even my really light one, the lighter of my like 4 6 strings that I have. And I didn't think it was possible. I just thought, you know, the strings are so much thicker, and with 6 of them, there's so much more tension that I didn't think you could. In fact, the guys at Sandberg, the company that's out of Germany that makes this, they said a lot of the bridges pulled right out of the wood because the wood was too soft.
Wow.
The screws would just pull out of it. So they were just trying to tinker and find it, and they found it, something called Paulani, which I think might be out of Brazil, and Norwegian roasted maple on the neck. It's dark from roasting, and I think the roasting makes it a little bit lighter. So, but also the tone, I think because it's more porous, it vibrates more.
Interesting.
So it was like feeding 2 birds with 1 worm. I was like, oh my goodness. I couldn't believe it, man. So it's like Christmas. So it's like I could dance again. My bass weighs half what it weighs, and it sounds like twice as fast.
Well, it shows in your performances. We've been watching, because we're doing this thing for Nugs, we've been watching every minute of every show, and the freedom, your physical freedom of movement is much, much, much greater this year, and your joy in playing seems even more apparent than usual.
Well, I can hear it, and everybody else can hear it. Like Mickey came up to me, we were doing like this, it got into some African stuff, and he could hear the bass much better, like everybody can. He was like, "You're a bad man." He's like, "I didn't know you could play like that." I was like, you know, after 7 years we've been playing. But you know, he told me, he was like, I can really hear it now. This is like since the first night of the tour. He's like, "What's that bass, man?" And so yeah, I can hear it better. Everybody can hear it. I'm getting people doing audience just from their iPhone. Man, the bass is right here. I was like, that's never happened.
Right.
Right? I mean,
it's sounding great in the mix that we're getting. It's sounding great in the recordings that are mixed and ready for download a couple of days later. Yeah, you are very much in it this year. And again, the physical liberation you've experienced with your back feeling better, all of it is manifesting beautifully. Now you mentioned Mickey, and one of the highlights of this tour was the beam string incident, which was an incredible revelation. I didn't know what was going on at first. I saw you tapping the strings of your bass with what looked like a string of some kind, but I didn't see the prelude to it. So I thought, oh, maybe Oteil broke a bass string. And I said, no, all 6 of them are there. And then I said, oh my God, that thing's dangling over the drum riser.
Yeah, it's funny. I was right there at the side stage because it was a particularly good one.
Yeah.
And we were just watching. And at the end, he just goes, bam, and the string comes flying, super long.
Yeah.
So if the front of the stage is this way and the crowd's there, it just goes flying. It looks like slow motion, like when you see an accident. And we were just like, yeah. And so I'm supposed to run out after that. And I get out there and I see it still hanging there. I was like, oh, yeah, baby. And it made me think, I was like, I wonder if Colonel Bruce helped him bust that off of there for me. Because that's the first thing I thought of was like, Sun Ra, right? Space is a place. So I just went there. And Mickey was so tickled because I don't think he knows Colonel Bruce or remembers my connection. And he was like, dude, that was so space. I was like, yeah, that was Colonel Bruce 101. So I guess
for those who don't know what that means, go look up Colonel Bruce Hampton, an amazing musician from the Southeast who, and by the way, make sure you read all the way through to the end because he chose the most amazing way to end his life as well. But Oteil and so many other great players came up through Colonel Bruce's little improvisational farm system that he gave a great gift to all of us by training guys like you.
Well, you guys probably know a lot of his acolytes, the right word? I'm sure. But like Jimmy Herring from Widespread Panic, Derek and Dwayne Trucks were both. Dwayne played in his band, both heavily influenced by the Colonel. Lots of people, man.
I worked with Jeff Mosier a lot.
Another so many people going on back. Like when I met him, Paul Barrere was on his record from Little Feat, and he just knew everybody. Yeah, it's like, how do you know all these people? So yeah, he's a Mike Gordon, all the Fish guys, deeply influenced by the Colonel. Mike Gordon made a movie with him.
Yeah. So how does your episode with the string off the beam reflect your teachings, the teachings of Colonel Bruce?
Well, Colonel was the one that taught me. He was like how confined my view of not only music but also myself was. And he was like, he pointed out something to me. He was like, we don't just make music, we make sound. Instruments also just make sounds, and we make sounds. Kind of like if your mom dies, you're not going to cry in a key or in tune or a melody. You know what I mean? Like it's going to just come out of you, a human expression. So he was like, can you play me some stuff that's not music? And I was like, how do you mean? And he would go like that, like he would do it on my bass. So that's what I did. I just took the string and I touched it to the other strings and the pickup and just, let's see what sounds it makes. Let's see how many different sounds I can make with it. Low, high, scraping, tapping, staccato, loud, soft. You know what I mean? Like, let's just tinker. Let's play. You know?
Yeah. And, if people hear that people were students of Colonel Bruce or disciples of Colonel Bruce, you're not really talking about a musical genre. You're talking about a whole philosophical underpinning.
Yeah. And I think it would vary. We see it in other musicians like Sun Ra, people who they called avant-garde, but I just think are also extraterrestrials with some extra, like the Colonel, the older I get, that's what I think. I was like, oh, you need a label for them. How about partially alien? you know.
Yeah.
But it was a whole philosophy for sure, and um, I think a lot of the musicians like Ornette, and I did a thing with Creative Music Studio, I think it's called, Carl
Oh yeah.
Berger
Oh yes.
with Mark Ribot, and Joe Russo was on that gig. He's the one that got me in on it. Billy Martin was in it. Um, and we did it at Brooklyn Bowl, and it was a very much an improv thing. So we deal with that. We deal with sound, play emotion, play you're embarrassed, play you're happy, play you're angry, play you're sad, play all of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Creative Music Studio, again, they're teaching a philosophy as much as they are.
Yes.
They're not so rooted in music theory. They're teaching
Yeah.
you, or kind of reteaching you, how to hear and how to make
Yes.
sound, in a spontaneous fashion.
Yes. Which we don't have. Why do we have blockage? Now that I have kids, or I love hearing audience tapes from someone's phone and everybody's singing, Brown Eyed Women, and they get to some part and you hear all the different, how many people are tone deaf. But I love that because
Yeah.
that's the sound of a bunch of kids singing a song.
Yeah.
And it's all of us being big kids. We're all joined in. It's not just for those on stage. That's the sound of joy. So that doesn't sound bad to me. It sounds like joy to me,
Yeah. A dear friend of mine and I went to a Grateful Dead show in Irvine, and they did a beautiful Wharf Rat, but right behind my friend and I was a guy who was singing along in a volume you would not expect on Wharf Rat. He was singing Wharf Rat as though it was Casey Jones or something. And he was a perfect quarter tone off. And he was a perfect, just millisecond behind the beat. And it might have been annoying had my friend and I not been raging on mushrooms, but we found it to be utterly hilarious and brilliant performance art because of the condition we were in. So if you open yourself to accept something like that, it can be beautiful.
Well, it's just like the T-shirt you're wearing.
Yeah.
It's they asked Sun Ra, they were like, who are your influences? He goes, the birds, trees, sounds, nature, the ocean. I was just like, wow, he started there before he got to musicians.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking like that, you hear somebody saying it off, it's not off anymore. It's just some microtonal music.
Let's talk about Dead and Company. It's so nice to have you singing all those ballads, man. It's one of my favorite things in the whole scene is you
Thank
get to do all those sweet tunes.
I appreciate it so much, man. I have the really good fortune of meeting Maureen Hunter recently, and she told me, she was like, I really love the way you do those ballads. And it just meant so much because I never knew if they checked it out, And she follows us. She listens to the streams and stuff. So I told her I'm working actually on an album of just Garcia Hunter ballads.
Wow.
And I sent her some of the demos that I did for it. And she really liked them. So it means a lot. Those ballads have got me through a lot. Like they got me through the pandemic. They got me through Kofi's passing, my older brother. They're getting me through my dad's recent passing. I mean, I just sat there and worked on To Lay Me Down and cried about Kofi for probably 3 months or something. They've really had a deep, huge impact and been a big process of healing for me. So it's just surreal to meet her and to have her tell me that.
That particular corner of the Hunter Garcia songbook is a particularly deep one, and Hunter talked about the magic of Jerry's voice and what control he had of a somewhat limited instrument, but he made such amazing use of it. And Hunter referred to that Jerry had a real gift for transmitting the pathos of those songs and the sadness of those songs.
he just let it come out. I mean, he's a perfect example of what Colonel Bruce was talking about. About we all have our own sound. Like we never think about it when we're talking. Like or how to make, you know, it just is what we are. We just have to open our mouth. So it's our intention that is really what is being transmitted. Some people could say, oh, this is good or bad. That's subjective. That's an opinion. But I think we can feel what's good or bad.
Well,
You know what I mean?
when I was a young Deadhead in 1972, studying up on all this stuff and just starting to go to shows regularly, the thing that about Jerry's singing that reached me first was just the sort of calmness of it. There was
Yeah.
a sweetness to his tone. It wasn't, again, not a particularly strong or rich voice, but he just made such beautiful use of it.
Yeah. I think that a thing that comes to my mind always is the availability, like his fragility, and just whatever he was just able to just leave it right there on a plate for you. Like it was totally accessible. You didn't have to reach for it or search for it or feel like it's behind some veil. It's just right there. And that's that to again to Colonel Bruce was the key to everything. If you could really put yourself out there, it's a very brave thing to do. But he was such a gentle soul. He just, I don't know if he could even help it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
funny. His
you know,
voice is very healing to me, and guitar playing.
yeah. I'm a great fan of old movies that have really distinctive character actors in them. Like they're not the pretty leading man types. They're the guys who,
Yeah.
who lend the story extra flavor by, being kind of rough-hewn and a little off center. And Jerry was that kind of storyteller.
Yeah.
He didn't sing with a conventionally pretty voice, but he conveyed the stories so beautifully. Another Colonel Bruce reference. Colonel Bruce used the word intention a lot,
Yes.
and
That was
and
it.
and Jerry's intention was always so plain.
Very just so available. I mean, how no wonder so many people related to it
Yeah,
and do relate to it
yeah.
because you feel it's like, yeah, I feel that. I feel exactly like that, you
Mhm.
know? And now that I'm older and been through some stuff, phew, boy, do I feel it.
Hmm.
Boy, do I feel it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that other aspect of the band, which is the way things have been blending instrumentally. And one thing we've learned in this long Grateful Dead timeline is that from the times the band was taking on a new keyboard player, or when they had people guest with them, or since the Grateful Dead ended, since new people have joined the founding members,
Yeah.
every new person and every new background that comes into the music can change it in either subtle or dramatic ways. you know you have changed up the pocket a lot with the bass, but you also stay true to the Grateful Dead philosophy of bringing in a lot of influences and keeping melodic things happening. You're not playing the traditional bass player's role of just holding down the bottom.
Yeah.
We've seen it dramatically on this tour because of the alternation between Bill and Jay on
Yeah.
drums. The grooves really change from show to show. And it seems to, instead of people seeing that as a disadvantage, they just seize it. They say, okay, let's do this with this combination of people.
I think it's also because that's part of the Grateful Dead philosophy that's baked into the cake too. And I think people can feel Jay's intention. And Jay's been living this music for what, 30 years now?
Coming up on it.
Um, so, and then uh, Jay and I played together a bunch in my band, in Oteil and Friends.
Right.
And then when he started playing with Wolf Brothers all the time, I had to find someone else. And so we have our chemistry already together. We have some years that we put in and also playing this music. And so when he came in, it was just like, boom. I feel like it's more, it definitely goes, I can go real deep into the funk part of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But he has that latitude that I think really comes from jazz and all the improvisational musics, where we're not just going to play a repetitive thing. Like he could just symbol out what whatchamacallit say, Joe Russo. He said, "I don't just play time. I play space and time." So it was a
Yeah.
Tony Williams quote.
Yeah.
I played
Perfect.
space and time, or
That's
time and
perfect.
space.
Right.
So yeah, and it's cool. I'm really grateful the audience is feeling it, because you can't ever tell. It all can look good on paper, and then when you start playing, it's like it's just not. And this just went boom, and it's been really great. So
Yeah.
There have
it's
even
nice
been a
having
couple of
both.
nights where Jay started the set and Billy finished it, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
those are also kind of interesting, And
I love it.
it's also been fun to see you up there on the riser during the drums. But there was one time recently we had all four of yous up there, Jay and Bill and Mickey and you. That was quite the thing.
We had to do it, but now that Jay's out, I've tried to go back and stretch my back out for a little bit. So I've been letting Jay, Bill, and Mickey play it by themselves, and then come out and do the beam part of the solo. But or if I could stretch quick, I can get back up there. But by then, the back starts feeling it, so I got to go back in the dressing room and do some DDPY real quick.
Well, you mentioned Oteil and Friends, and I do want to get onto that a little bit, because that's a thing you've been doing whenever you've had a little space in between everything else. And it's one of those projects where you bring in different people from gig to gig, or run of shows to run of shows. And it's that thing again of a different person informing the sound. Sometimes you've had the wonderful horn players from Trey's band, and you've had Eric Krasno in there. And as you
Yeah.
said, you had Jay, and you've had Pete Lavazzoli, and it
Hmm.
just, the music keeps changing. And you also get to honor not just your Grateful Dead connection, but of course your Allman Brothers band heritage,
Hmm.
and Colonel Bruce, and all of that. So it's really, it's if you want to check out as many aspects of Oteil as you can in one place, Oteil and Friends is kind of the place for you.
Definitely. And we're going to do some dates coming up with Melvin Seals and the Kimmocks, Steve and Johnny.
Oh, very good.
And I think Tom, is Tom on those, or Krasno? I'm not sure. We have lineups changing for different regions and different, but it's super fun, man. I'm like really excited about this. I miss playing with Melvin a bunch, man.
That's exciting. Listen, I think we need to wind this up now. It took us 2 tries to get it all done, but we're about a half an hour into this conversation now, and I hate to stop it because we're having so much fun, but we're in a limited time frame between sets of the Dead and Company show
That's right.
here on Dead Air, and it's just been a real delight to talk with you and to hear you and see you all through this tour. It's last year was spectacular, and this year somehow is even more wonderful, and I appreciate it so very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really great to see you guys.
Yeah.
I hope I could see you. It's maybe next year we could be in person again. And
Would be nice, wouldn't it?
this COVID stuff's wearing me out, but
I
we're
hope
doing
so.
it.
I hope we can, man. I was so happy to see you at an Oteil and Friends gig at the Capitol a few months back, and I hope there's a lot more of that coming up, man. So stay well.
Thank you.
Keep dancing with no back pain. And
Yes. And one last thing, be sure everybody to tune into the Comes a Time podcast
Yes.
that Oteil and Mike Fenoya co-host. I've had the privilege of being a guest on it, and I
Same here.
listened to a bunch of them. It's also a splendid thing and worth checking out. Comes a Time podcast with Oteil Burbridge and Mike Fenoya on Osiris, all the places you get those kind of podcasts. Thank you again, Oteil.
thanks.
Thank
Oteil.
you. And to everyone, my new mantra in COVID times: stay negative.
Perfect way to end. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, that was such a joy. And the more observant among you may have noticed that Oteil and I switched frames on the screen midway. We had a technical glitch, and when we reset things, somehow our positions changed. I think most of you are perceptive enough to tell me and Oteil apart, though. So No harm
I
done.
it was just my Zoom froze, and then we had to restart everything. Unfortunately, everybody was ready to roll. That was really sweet. He's such a lovely guy to talk with. I a great musician.
Indeed. It's a pleasure to know him, and I'm so happy he landed in this band because he makes the music better in so many ways. So lovely to hear that Maureen Hunter went to Shoreline and got
Yeah,
to tell Oteil how much he loves the ballad. And we heard that beautiful China Doll tonight as a perfect example of what he does with the
we
ballads.
did.
So I guess we're gonna throw it back to the stage. The band ought to be coming back pretty soon. Thank you to Jacob Lima, as always. Thank you to all of you for watching. Please check out nugs.net for ways you can relive this music and relive decades of great music in their library. And we'll be back Sunday night. We've got another fantastic guest coming up, and we're entering the last week of the tour, and we're going to take this thing out in style. So
Truly.
thank you all, and enjoy
Thanks,
the rest of the
everybody.
show.